And today we are delighted to have Renee Roth, Dr. Renee Roth, here to present on value propositions and what that looks like in your job search and even afterwards. So Renee, would you like to take the stage?
I'd love to. Thanks so much. Hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint and hear me. If you can't, let Alan know. And so today we're going to do a little follow-up. If you were with us on January 24th, Alan did a presentation on the 5-second elevator pitch. And so this is a little bit of that, a little bit of enhancement of that, and a little bit of my take on it as well. So we're all familiar with the elevator speech. It's your 60-second monologue where you talk. The person is silently praying that they get teleported somewhere else, anywhere else. And it's hard to memorize. And in the end, the blank stare is even harder to endure. So after my presentation, we're going to practice a little bit. So get ready. And I know all of you have been in the military. You can think and do two things at once. So you can listen and think both. And so I'll expect you to be prepared when we're finished. So the standard format is I do X for such company, industry, by fill in the blank and resulting in whatever. So that's the standard format that everybody uses. It's taught in job transition classes everywhere. It's useful. It's very predictable. And that's what people expect to hear when they're at a networking meeting. The keys to it, it's very short. It's 2 to 3 sentences, takes about 20 seconds to say. So, practice it. And one thing to note is if you're in a 20-minute networking meeting, the book on page 75, you'll see that you're allowed 60 seconds for your value proposition if you're in a one-on-one meeting. So again, the key is it's easy to memorize. It doesn't sound like a script, hopefully. It's an attention getter. And if you make it relevant to the person you're talking with, it's going to pique their interest. They're going to want to know more about you. And also, hopefully in the end, it generates a question. So it becomes a dialogue. Once you've given your value proposition in this way, people are going to, want to continue talking with you instead of wishing that they were, somewhere else. So what's in the value proposition is basically, who are you? And we recommend that you include a military reference. Talk about your ability to lead, your experience in what field, and there are various fields within the military even. So I would suggest that you translate what you did in the military, not one for one necessarily, but put it in terms of, here's a department or a role that they can identify with. The actions, don't be afraid to show your passion and talk about relevant industries. So I'll tell you one thing, even though we're experiencing what they call the Great Resignation now, there's a lot of competition for jobs out there. Some of you who are in the job market know that. So think about the value proposition as your brand. So all of these things you can see are a brand. Here's the Eagle Group of Minnesota Veterans. Here's our logo. Oftentimes brand is represented by a logo. We all know the green siren lady at the top. The white swoosh, that's always recognizable. The square blue in, LinkedIn. And here we have the lovely and ever popular Alan. And your picture is also part of your brand. So I'm going to ask, when you see this picture of Alan, which I took off his LinkedIn page, what do you immediately sense about him?
So just even by Alan's picture, he just comes across as very approachable and someone that you can talk to. And I think that's really important. given what he does and how he helps veterans.
Absolutely.
Caring and brilliant.
Yes. And you notice he's wearing a suit and tie. So he's fairly serious about business and about, not necessarily about himself, but, serious about being a business person. And the smile definitely shows that, he's a friendly person and someone you'd probably like to get to know. So here's an example that I pulled from our friend George Murray. And the top one I copied out of his book, Hired. And you can read that quickly. Some of you are probably familiar with it. If you talked to him before, he's presented for us several times. But also George starts out, he's got a value proposition that starts out, I'm a rappel master. I drop into companies, and I didn't copy the whole thing here, but you can kind of get the idea. And he talks a little bit more about his, he says something about, and when I was such and such in the Army, I did this and that. So I just couldn't find the whole quote from him, and I didn't want to make it up. So but you can see how that example of the value proposition would generate more questions and really grab your attention. So when you're networking with people, when you're interviewing, when you're out and about meeting other people and talking about careers and jobs and that sort of thing, it's not the time to be shy. What you should be developing is brand, and it's what are you known for? What are your passions? And what would your best friend say about you? You can own that. Tell them who you are, not just what you do. And I would say be your own advocate. So there is another approach that I found on top of this for some people that's focused on your passion. And it's the same idea, but slightly different words. And this last slide, is this readable? I know it's small print. I wasn't sure how it would show up on the screen.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so instead of saying, I do by, this industry that results, this template from an organization called evoke.pro. And this is all their, template. I didn't make any of this up. I'm totally, giving them the credit for this. But it's a little bit different way of, kind of tweaking that standard value proposition. So you can say, I'm passionate about, I'm known for, I believe, or I value, and I'm on a mission to help. You can see you plug in your individual, my skill, helping to improve something that my listener or I value. So I'll give you a minute to look over that, and I can post it in the chat after I'm done talking too. But take some time to listen to that. And then Alan, I'd like to have some discussion. And as I mentioned before I started, I'm done with the formal presentation, but I'd like to have some people speak up and develop their own template based on any of these ideas if they're willing to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me stop the recording.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is more about